Good Lord, it's another episode of Bob. In this episode, I'm going to be doing all sorts of stuff with the body frame. I hope you like this kind of thing. It's really is making me think outside the box. It's not outside my comfort zone because I absolutely love doing this sort of stuff. But you know, a little bit of advanced thinking on this episode. If you like it, and if you don't, and I can't possibly understand why you wouldn't, give me a thumbs down. There is profanity in this video. There's profanity in all my videos because I honestly cannot be bothered to edit it all out. If you want to contact me, Church House Classics, it's all one word, at gmail.com. And if you fancy buying me a pint or just plain supporting the channel, you don't have to buy me beer. You buy me equipment or you buy me odds and sods. Anyway, there's a PayPal me link down here. All donations are gratefully received. Thank you to every single person who has. Enjoy the video. So we're on to A-post repairs here. I've made up this repair section here to go onto the bottom of the A-post. I'm going to plug weld it onto the sill itself. The backing piece, which is here, is already in place. So I'm going to plug weld it through that and onto the backing piece. I've got a little spot welder here, which I borrowed from Paul. It's not bad actually, nice bit of kit that. I spot welded the floor. This floor got spot welded on rather than tagging it. Get that piece welded on, then I can do the piece on the back. Now, for the big chunk, I've got the bit I cut off, so I know already exactly what my repair panel needs to be like. And this is quite a good idea if you can keep hold of the bit you use and use thin discs. And all I need to do is kind of put a 1 centimetre return on that far edge. The only challenge I'm going to have with this really is that the posts that go through that the what's his name sit on, I'm going to need to make up a small panel for that, because if I was to have that go straight down, they're not going to be long enough. Not really a problem. I've knocked out 2 of the posts, one of them was salvageable. Once that's welded down there, then I can pull this in tight and just put a tag on there. It's more or less exactly how I want it. Might need to just bend that back a tiny bit once it's in place, but I think first and foremost, let's get it welded on. The rest of the A-post, although it looks shonky, is actually quite solid up here, and the metal is really thick. This is all 18 gauge steel, this. So it's quite lightweight compared to the chassis, but it's okay. It's all right. Before I welded that on, by the way, I did double check that the plastic sill cover fitted over it, and I've also compared it because luckily I've got haggis here rather than a polytunnel full of rusting relics, which is where you used to be. No, you've never been in the polytunnel, you haven't, Bob. No, you haven't. So I'll get that A-post done, and then I can put the door back on, because I want to start fiddling around with the door, really getting pieces tacked roughly in the right sort of place so I can get that off with a new skin put on it. I didn't do anything at all with the back end today. The reason being is that I want to take the back wings off before I start challenging the bits like that bit over there, where the goalpost just doesn't reach down as far as the body frame or the internal cross member. Incidentally, that line you can see there, that line across there, can you see that? That is where it mounted onto the back of the bobtail, so heaven knows how that all worked out. I know that the cross member was mounted on top of the chassis rather than actually where it should have been. Right, I'll crack on with this welding. I'm not going to bother time-lapsing this because you've seen me weld, pigeon snot and all that, but yeah. Fucking welder's playing me up, which is a bit annoying. So I've had this welder 4 years, I think. Bought it from Welder's Warehouse. So let's do a bit of diagnosis on it, because I was struggling yesterday. It's a pretty basic old welder, really. 150 amp, so it's 30 through 150 amp. Euro torch. Earth cable. And on the front here, it's got wire speed and a fairly basic bit of power. And then all I've done really is just worked out what the various wire feed speeds are for the various powers. And I'd never use it on power 4 because that's just 150 amps and it needs a 16 amp supply for that. But I can use powers 1, 2 and 3 from my phone Thank you for your contribution. Yeah, I use powers 1, 2 and 3 for pretty much everything I do on bodywork. Power 4 I would use for chassis work, and luckily the power supply down in Devon was good enough for that. I need to get myself a 16 amp supply up here if I'm going to do any more main chassis welding. Luckily I don't need to here on this because I've done it already. But basically, in a nutshell, I think that the coughing coffee face, I think that the wire speed motor is inconsistent. So if I go to power 3, I'm not going to weld, I've got no earth circuit attached. In fact, let's take, for safety purposes, I'm just going to take the earth cable out, so there's no risk of this thing kind of arcing out. Now, there's no gas turned on at the moment. If I turn it on, you can hear it getting faster. Now, if I take the feed off, so it's not feeding the wire now, let's turn the wire speed down, go down to a lower welding so we can actually hear the wire feed motor. So there's no load on this whatsoever. I don't know if you can hear that. I'll bring the microphone in real close. I think the wire feed motor is fucked. Makes welding a challenge, it really does. Fuck's sake. I'll get in touch with Welder's Warehouse because this box came from, I mean, like I say, it's well outside warranty. I've done so much welding with this machine. But in reality, it's probably had, I think it's the 4th, this is a brand new 5 kilo reel of wire. So this is the 4th reel of wire that's been through this machine. So in sort of life cycle terms, that's not great really, is it? But the problem is, I mean, when you're welding, I mean, someone will probably correct me here, I'm sure. So when you're welding, what basically happens is you want the wire to come out of the torch and create the arc. And then the wire comes back, but constantly feeds and keeps the arc as close to the metal, probably normally a couple of mil away from the metal. So you can actually build up a pool and then start moving it around. But if the wire is then kind of inconsistent with the way it's feeding out, you're going to end up with blobs of weld all over the place. And the other thing the other struggle I had, the struggle I had the other day, I think I videoed this. It's my lump of scrap steel here. I was getting nipples. So I created a little pool of weld and then stopping the weld and there was a nipple coming out. Anyone know why that happens? Gas was on. And then running a bead, I mean, okay, I was running different voltages and so forth, but the beads on the whole, that one was far too hot, that one was far too cold, but getting reasonable beads out of it. So, right. Again, to my mind, that's getting faster the longer I hold the trigger. Now, okay, I've got the wire speed turned up quite fast at the moment. If I go down to where the wire speed as I would be welding on power 1, which would be about there. I think it's fucked. I think the wire speed motor's gone. Which is most irritating. I tell you now, most irritating. I mean, it's not going to stop me welding, but it's going to stop me welding beautifully. So I'll order another welder up, I think. And I think that the BN150T will be repaired and put into the reserve. Having a quick coffee break, so I got this piece welded in. It's flush enough that with just a tiny skim of filler we can hide some of these welds. I don't want to go berserk grinding these welds back because I don't want to be weakening the structure of the A-post. Now I'm going to spot weld it down this edge here when it all comes off, and I've been welding in, ouch, that's still warm, welding in the tubes that go through for the strengthening tubes that go through for the door pillar bolt. So the top one is original. I was able to salvage that one, and I've used it as a reference point using the hinge, an old hinge, there we are, pattern part, putting the hinge against here and just lining everything up and making sure that it goes through. Welding the other side, it ain't pretty, it doesn't need to be, no one's going to see it. By the time I put a load of glute around that hole there, you can see I managed to drill it a bit too big. So I get me pinky in there, so I'm just going to weld a piece of steel around that edge there, just to panel that in. But this A-post is almost done. I've got another panel, which is just there, falling on the floor, which I'm going to weld down this leading edge, and then just put a flat piece over the top, and then grind all of the welds flat, and it will look beautiful. A-post done on driver's side. Leading edge of B-post done, trailing edge not done, because wing's in the way. But I thought I'd concentrate on all this shit today. I was going to mess around with the door, but because the welder's not playing nicely, I'm not doing that today. I'm going to do this instead, as you notice. Coming together all right. Just need to get the finger file on that because it's just gone through about 1 millimetre too far. It's great on this edge, 1 millimetre too far on the back edge. It's a bit too kind of, you know, in there for me to get the grinding disc. I've got a die grinder, but it's air powered and my compressor isn't here. I need to get myself sorted out with the compressor in this workshop. And then up here, there's an L section which goes, in fact, you can see the hole for the pop rivet is there, and there's another one down here somewhere. There's one there, and there's a third one down here. It's hidden behind the paint somewhere, but there's an L section which goes in there, which is what the inner wing, so the outer wing, bolts onto. So that will hide a lot of this here, and then there's also a reinforcing plate that goes, splash plate that goes down the outside here, and the splash plate just keeps a lot of the road crud from coming in and attacking the leading edge of the door. And as you can see from the state of the doors, it does a fucking beautiful job. Right, welder has officially been retired. Anyone want a BM 150T Blue MIG? Shitty wire feed issues. The problem is, as you're welding, I had to turn the wire feed up because otherwise what was happening was the wire kind of goes in and then comes away. So it's constantly kind of like pulsing in and out. So while you're watching it, you kind of move the torch backwards and forwards in rhythm with it going in and out. And then you end up with big pools of weld, and most of it was going onto the floor. But I got fed up with it, to be honest. Right. So I've ordered a new welder. Nice Oxford 200. Oh yes, looking forward to that arriving. But they make them to order, so it's not going to be here for a week or so. So I've borrowed another welder in the interim. But this morning, this arrived. Now this is an LT77 5-speed gearbox from a low mileage VM, the one that provided all the parts for that. That's Haggis, by the way, hiding underneath there. Haggis hasn't been repainted, it's just got a white tarp over the top just to protect some of the paint. So this is from a 1990 VM engined 4-door. It was low mileage. The engine was in great condition, so I've got no reason to disbelieve the state of the gearbox. Now I will take some of the covers off and have a quick look around it and so forth, but it all appears to work. So effectively what we've got here is same as the kind of the automatic gearbox I've got in my Range Rover. So this bit at the front here, that's a viscous differential. So there's automatic diff lock on it. You've got a chain drive Borg-Warner transfer box, mated to the standard LT 77 5-speed gearbox. This is what the customer wants in the car, and I actually think I've got another one of these boxes down in Devon. There's another one coming to me fairly soon, and I think, you know, if you're going to do a resto mod and you haven't got the original engine and gearbox for the car, then it's not a bad option, you know. I need to have a fiddle around and see if I can get the long stick function working, which basically bolts on here. I don't quite know how I'm going to adapt it for the, because the Borg-Warner doesn't have the left-right lever, it's just got the forwards, and it's a bit stiff back, so you've got high and low range. It's stiff down here, maybe some stiffness up there, but I'll lube all that up. Different mountings on it. I just need to double check the mounting situation for these gearboxes, because I thought that they were the cotton reel type. It could be that that's a feature of Diesel 2. Not the second episode of Diesel, but Diesel 2. The other consideration I'm going to have to work on is handbrake, because on this the handbrake is designed to come up through the floor very much like it did on Haggis. So there's no point saying that, Richard. You have to actually go in there and have a look. You see the handbrake comes up through the centre console. Probably can't. Never mind. Deal with it. That was rude, Richard. So because we're having a flat floor in Bob, I'm not quite sure yet how the handbrake's going to work. That is something else I need to consider. Tim sent the prop shafts with it because they are different to the LT95 prop shafts. Because again they're low mileage, I'm just going to rebuild them with new UJs and put them back on again. So they'll go back on, and it should mate up directly to the axles, I believe. I'm led to believe. So really all I need to do with this thing is handbrake cable probably can stay on. This is the handbrake cable here. There's a whole loom attached to it which just goes all over the place. I just need to check where the loom is and so forth. Take the front prop off. There's a couple of bent bolts on the back of the handbrake drum. So I'll pull the handbrake drum off, undo the big nut on the back here, and that then allows you to kind of replace those studs. It's not an issue. You can get those replaced. Tim's included the mounting plates here. It does look like it just drops into those. I'll have to see what the mountings are supposed to be for the V8 version. But then the challenge is going to be, do I need a V8 bell housing? Now I've got one in Devon. Oh, the other consideration, I need to just double check input shaft. So I need to make sure this input shaft here, which is actually reasonable, you know, it's good order. Make sure the input shaft is going to fit the clutch plate for the V8, and also it's going to fit into the end of the V8 crankshaft, because I don't know yet. Now on the LT95 there's a whole engine plate on the front here. It's quite a massive engine plate actually, and you take that off and that allows you to change the input shaft of the gearbox. Not entirely sure I know how to do that on the LT95. It could end up being bolts down here. These bolts take this section off. Not worked on an LT77 before. Did I say LT95? I meant to say LT77. This is an LT77, Richard. Yeah. So, VM bell housing. And obviously, I know it. I knew all along I'd have to change the bell housing, because I think the VM, the starter motor's in a completely different position. Blah de blah de blah. Because the V8 one's down here. Clutch hydraulics are on the same side? Yes, they are the same side as they are on Haggis anyway. Because Haggis has also got this Borg Warner chain drive 5-speed box as well. But ultimately that's going to go V8 automatic. So I think what I'll do, rather than chuntering on, I'm going to get this thing taken apart, get the bell housing off it, work out what I'm going to do with it. Probably, and could mount the bulk of the gearbox into the car, then attach the bell housing afterwards. Really it's just a case of making sure that I can get everything in place. So for this exercise we're going to go in through the door aperture. Probably don't you need to take the door off, look at that. Take the gearbox cover out, take the old gearbox out, and work out what I'm going to do from that point. And you know, obviously then we can offer up a new gearbox. But here we've got, you can see in here, that's a V8 bell housing. So that's a V8 bell housing from an LT95. It could well be, you see, that that bolts up to the rest of the gearbox. I don't know. I could even measure. I have got a crank, but I could measure. See, the splines look larger on that. Do they look larger? Yeah, the splines are completely different. So do we use a VM clutch or do we use a V8 clutch? That's an interesting one, isn't it, Richard? We hadn't thought about that. No, we hadn't. We've taken all the odds and sods off it that I just don't need getting in the way while I lift it off. Obviously the bell housing had to come off. That's a VM bell housing over there. And I've just bought a kind of used old stock V8 bell housing. Input shaft is exactly the same. Would you believe that? Just phoned up Ashcroft and they've told me, which I'm delighted about. It means I don't have to split the gearbox apart. It's got a nice feel to it. I'm just going to give it a quick clean around in here. And I'm going to drop this into the chassis because it's just going to be in the way otherwise. And I can get on with some welding then. Quite pleased with that. And I also need to fiddle around with the long stick conversion on the top of it, but I will just double check the spigot bush on my crank fits in there. I guess I can measure that input shaft there. The reason I was confused, my brain just was not bloody working. Down here we've got an LT95 4-speed gearbox. It's got a different clutch plate, hasn't it? You silly arse, Richard. You silly man. So apparently the 5-speed V8 clutch plate fits straight onto that. It will have a damn good clean before anything goes in there. Make sure the splines are all cleaned out. But no, it feels good. Nice little gearbox. Pleased with that. So yeah. That's one thing done anyway. Let's get it in the car. Well, that's been a long day's work. I didn't video much of it because it's just welding really, but what I've basically done here, finished off welding in this section here. I'll need to grind back the welds and so forth, but it's solid. It ain't going nowhere. This triangular plate here, that is just a splash plate. It stops the water getting through to the inner wing area. The B post is solid. Happy enough with that. Then I've moved on to the back end for now, and what I've basically done here, pardon the light, is remade up the lower edge of the goalpost, the bit that was missing. And again, welds need dressing back, but once they are dressed back, I think that'll be all right actually. I'm fairly happy with that. The outer wing fits beautifully. Just as a reminder, that's what it looked like before. That's what it looks like now. Right. What else? Oh yeah, the bell housing arrived today. There's a V8 bell housing there, so that's going to go on the gearbox tomorrow. Hopefully get this gearbox dropped in to the chassis tomorrow, because it'd be quite useful, because then I can move the car out into the workshop, because I'm largely finished now on the driver's side and I want to move on with the passenger side. Incidentally, I spoke to DDS. DDS has said that this black coating on here is not actually a transport paint, it is a primer. And so long as it's not kind of flaking, and it isn't, then yeah, paint over the top of it. Just key it and paint it. So it doesn't come off with thinners, and it doesn't come off with, well, it doesn't wipe off with thinners, I should say. And if I use a prep wheel on it, it does take quite a bit of effort to get it all off. So that's going to save me a shitload of time when it comes to tidying the panels up. I do want to get this bulkhead a lot tidier than it is at the moment before it goes for paint. And obviously the door needs doing. If I run out of things to weld, I've always got a door to weld. Anyway. Back on the body frame. Right, okay. What I've basically been doing is fiddling and fucking around with this thing continually, and I've got it more or less where I want it now. Oh, there's my hat. Wonder where that had gone. Right, so what have I been doing? Well, funny old game really, but I've wedged in a piece of old corrugated gate, come off the bottom of my gates over there, wedged that in underneath there, and that keeps this whole thing in roughly the right sort of height. What I'm next going to do is weld in that bloody great big piece of 16 gauge steel against the outside edge of the cross member and push it up inside the inner wing. Now this area inside is hidden by the spare wheels. It doesn't matter, I don't think, if there's a lip there, although I'll do my best to kind of make it look as tidy as possible. Really the key thing for me at the moment is to see if I can get this thing level. Now I've got it so the tailgate opens and closes with the minimum amount of fuss. That's on the driver's side. Happy with that. Driver's side, fucking lovely. Wing can go up just a millimetre or two, but there's a bit of adjustment in there, so I'm not fussed too much about that. Beautiful. This side here, and there's been a couple of tools. My most useful tool today has been the right angle. So what I've been basically doing with this fella, well, there's a couple of things I've been doing with it. First and foremost, putting it flat on the top there and measuring to the bottom of the red dot there. Okay. on both sides, checking nothing's moved. If I go to this side and do exactly the same thing, boom, it's there. Then measuring from that point there up to the inside edge there, again using the ruler, so I know that the tailgate is level. So getting the tailgate level was the first challenge, because obviously you've got a fair amount of adjustment on the tailgate. Then when I did that, lined up the outer wing, and that's when I put this mark on here. So I know that so long as the tailgate, which hasn't moved, lines up with that red dot there, that's not moved. But even that, belt and braces is not good enough for me. Because what I'm going to do is weld the plate, that plate where the primer is just drying down there, weld that onto the cross member, put the outer wing back on, quadruple check it, and then weld it to the inside of the goalpost. With me? That then will ensure that this inner wing now is perfect. You can see also I've put in the cross members. So I put one of the cross members in. For some reason I've got dozens of these body mount shaped things, these bits. That's not the best one I've got. I've got dozens of these. Can I find them? Can I bottom? Anyway, like that. So, little weld on the inside there. It's not completely finished, of course. Little weld on the inside there. Welded it to the base down there. Double checked all my alignments, and tailgate opens and closes feather fucking light. And lines up. Okay, ignore the fact that the gap is closing up and opening up. You can see there's a huge great bend in the metal there. Get that right, and it's too far over this way anyway. We're no longer banana shaped. Okay, there's a big push on the wing there, but that's because there's no... That lines up down there nicely now. This will line up nicely once the mud guard is in place. Lines up on the top edge. Yeah, this body frame's coming together quite quickly now. Say quite quickly, it's taken me all fucking week. But at least I'm happy now. I mean, starting with no reference points whatsoever for this rear goal post and the cross member, I think that's pretty good. That's got me really where I wanted it to be, which is good news, isn't it? The crane's out because I'm going to drop the gearbox in tomorrow. I've got a real struggle with this gearbox, and my struggle is that it came with mounts for the VM engine, which are these cone shaped things. These are unobtainium. Bastards. So I'm going to put the gearbox on, because obviously the mount goes that way up, and that then gearbox just drops into it. So at least then I'll be able to measure the distance between the edge of the gearbox and the chassis rail and work out what it is that I need to do with regards to getting correct mounts on there, or cotton reel mounts, as the kind of whatever you can use on all the petrol engines. But quite why these are absolutely unobtainium now, I don't know. This thing, fuck's sake. Let's do a video about the engine. Bollocks. Anyone fancy a cappuccino? Crappuccino. But look at this. Fucking look at it. How much nicer do you want a tailgate and rear wing to line up? Look at that. I think it's just worth the extra effort, but it has taken a while. These skates are good, by the way. They're very useful, even on this rocky floor. Nylon skates. They take 900 something. I don't know exactly how much they take now. I'm not going to bullshit. They came from SGS. They take 450 kilos each. There's a pair of very dead SUHIF carburetors down there, and even those are better than the ones I looked at yesterday. 450 kilos each, and I think really that probably weighs 1,000 kilos total at the moment. I think the total weight on these things unladen is 1,850, and you can see there's a fair amount missing out of this one at the moment. But I'll drop the gearbox back in. As I say, I'm well chuffed with that. I am pleased. I think that makes all the difference when the panels line up so nicely. I still need to do the lip along the top edge here, but now I know that the wing goes back onto its original bolt holes. It gives me something to work like with. I've got a baseline. Roof rail day. Right, okay. Where are we? Start of the problem is that when I look at the original vent panel that goes up the inside of the D post and the remains of the roof rail, which is still spot welded onto it, there's a bloody great gap in between the main roof rail and the rear roof rail. So I bought a complete roof rail from a donor vehicle, and I'm going to use chunks of this, I think, in the repair. Now, I was quite tempted, I think, to use the whole damn thing. I need to see how it's welded on up here. There's a weld under there, there's a weld under there. We might be able to just do that. The only reason I say that is because this edge along here is quite pitted. It needs some remediation. And this one is not as bad. Still there, but it's not as bad. My original plan, plan A, let's just pop this in here so it stays somewhere. Just stay there in the house. There we go. My original plan was actually to kind of cut along the top and like that, and then splice over the top of the B post, take it from there to the back of the car. I'm as yet undecided on how I'm going to do this, but what I'm going to start by doing is extracting the remains of the roof rail from the top of the interior panel here. Now I know it's corroded at the bottom. That's just flat steel. That's not too much of a problem here. But I'm just going to drill these spot welds through and see if we can get this lump off. And if we can get it off, then I don't have to worry about this piece, do I? At all. I can use that piece. And the trick is really to get this thing from there to there with one lump. Now I might still do this. What I have found is that the B post is pushed in very, very, very slightly. I can pull it backwards and forwards, and when I pull it backwards and forwards, you notice that the wing is further aligning itself. Now some of this can be down to the welding I did at the bottom end down here. There'll be some distortion built in, so there then becomes an advantage of using the whole panel rather than just bits of it. I need to pick this one apart to find out how many of the, because it looks like there's a weld here and then spot welds around this piece here, so it could be relatively easy to leave the screen pillar alone, because I don't really want to start splicing the screen pillar. It's a safety device and you can see it's double skinned there, so really just undoing it along the original welds up here. I've got the screen top rail on at the moment, but and then run from here right the way through. As you can see, it's got all of the bits that I need on it really, and it could just be a case of putting this entire rail onto the car. But until I start picking shit apart, I'm not going to know, and I'm not going to advise you. Well, that's torn it. Right, okay. So obviously we sacrifice the roof piece and then we work on the weld. Nice factory splatter up here. I do love finding these nice bits of archaeology as I go around. As you can see up here, I have now liberated all of the bits off the replacement roof rail that I need to liberate off it, and that's all really ready to line up once I've tidied up. Let's position you there. Once I've tidied up these welds here. So really I think what I'm going to do, you need to put a cut along here, but I don't want to damage this corner because that corner is part of the B post. So you can see here the structure of the thing. So the lip, that lip I don't need, this bit I don't need, this bit I don't need, all of this stuff I do need. So just being careful of where I cut. Now a lot of this stuff up here now is really going to be spot welds. There's a big spot weld panel on the top up there, and then it's just a case of lining things up, and the bastard can go on. I think it's going to fit. A-post was the easiest bit to cut. This one's a little bit trickier because the weld's up here. But as you can see, I've not damaged any of the gutter channel on that or the donor piece. Oh, it's a laugh though, isn't it? Look how much give there is in this. What I might need to do is measure. Actually, no, I'm probably not, to be honest, because I think once the screen rail is on, and there's a bit of give in the screen rail, once the screen rail is on, and this is bolted up to the goalpost, I'm going to get this width exactly where it should be. There's no point in me measuring at the moment, because I don't know if that side's not in. Yeah. Oh, the things we get up to on Saturday afternoons. I'll have to put the kettle on, I think. Might need a cuppa now before I start drilling out spot welds. Here we go. Little bit of fiddling and faffing around because obviously there's a welded joint on here and I didn't know how far it needed to go. But that's more or less in the right place now. The mounts for the screen cross member, they fit in, that fella. They fit in. That needs to come down a tiny bit, which it will do in a minute. And this lines up as well. So I'm going to weld this on, really. That lines up there beautifully. Those two corners. Yeah, happy with that. So just that bit needs to come down a tiny bit, which isn't going to be a problem. It might end up being when I've done that and that, put a ratchet strap around the sill, just pull this down into position and then put a weld along in there that's going to hold it in place. But I'm quite pleased with that. I think that fits nicely. There it is. Bit of tidying up on the welds up here, but once it's upside down, frame comes off, it'll fit. What the fuck is that? It's not weld. Again, up here, that gap will close up with a bit of weld. It lines up beautifully. The only thing that doesn't line up now is this. And this is catching on something at the top here, about there. So I'll take it off again, and when it kind of does fit, it will be fine. The back wing needs to come up. I dropped the back wing down, so the back wing needs to come up by that much. That much. That's 3mm, which will match then the tailgate. Door opens, closes. Oh yes. I'm quite pleased with that. That's been a fair amount of work there though. That really has. That's been 4 hours from that and that to this. The roof's not gone down properly at the front there, has it? It just wants pulling across a little bit. I mean, once the screws go in there and it pulls it down, it's going to look beautiful, this. Happy with it. Works. That's good. We're almost getting to the point we're going to put some springs on this. Boing, said Zebedee. So there you go. I know there's people out there that are going to be saying this is fucking Trigger's new broom or Trigger's old broom, but let's count the bits that were original to this car. Bulkhead, chassis, axles, door, B-post, screen pillar, D-post, rear, remains of the goalpost. The rest of this stuff is kind of like, you know, inner wings. Let's replace them. There's enough blue on this still, and green, that I'm happy that this is not Trigger's new broom. How very dare you, Sars.